We're live, guys. Live on Facebook. Hey, it's Steve Richards here with the CEO Nation. Good to see you guys jumping on. Got a guest I'm going to pull up here. What's up, Darren? I'll let you get going here. Welcome to everybody else. What's up, man?
Hey, good. How are you, man?
Good, good.
Just glad everything works. I was like, I'm not sure if all this is going to work out or need a different computer setting or whatever.
I see you got the virtual dojo background going on. That or
Yeah,
like you're gonna like go do some karate after you get done with this.
absolutely. We can do karate all over the place here. Boxing, karate, weightlifting. You got it.
That's awesome, dude. All right, cool. So, hey, Jacob, what's up, man? Happy New Year to you. Good to see everybody jumping on. So, all right, guys, if this is your first time on one of these weekly sessions, again, I'm Steve Richards, and here in the CEO Nation, we're trying to help entrepreneurs grow and to become CEOs so that you can have a business that works for you instead of you working for it. And a lot of people start a business or they think they start a business, right? And they just create another job for themselves, and they get stuck in the day to day. And all they want to do in the beginning is go full time in their business, and then later all they want to do is quit being full time in their business. So it's like, be careful what you wish for. But one of the big key components that isn't part of anybody building a real business is leveraging people. And so people are one of the top couple things that you'll have to master as a business owner: how to find people, how to attract people, how to lead people, how to comp and train them, and all those kinds of things. And so Darren and I were talking after a Facebook post that he had, and he came on today to do a case study. We're going to talk about a position that he's going to fill, and I'm going to talk about some of the best practices that will help you guys consider how, when, who you're hiring, what you're doing. And again, if you're new to this group or the CEO Nation, every Monday at 3:30, I'm on doing a training webinar. I want it to be interactive though. So you guys are all that are on live. If you're in the Zoom with me, if you're on Facebook watching live, cool. Or if you're watching the replay, cool. Post in there if you want. I won't be able to interact during the session with you. So you want to be on the Zoom here where you can ask questions. I want to take questions along the way, but I'll definitely make sure that we cover the meat in the first 45 minutes of what we're going to do today, which is basically just help Darren as a case study so that it ultimately helps all you guys. And then I'll take some Q&A at the end, which would be open to anything business-wise, entrepreneurial-wise you guys want to talk about. And then again, this is being piped into our Facebook group, the CEO Nation. So if you're in through our email list or some other avenue and you didn't know that we have a group, it's called the CEO Nation on Facebook. You can go jump into that group. And all these weeklies that we do are piped into there live as well. So you can watch all the replays or catch them after the fact. So, all right, cool. What's going on, man? He's connecting audio. So I've got a fly on the wall jumping in here today. Looks like we lost him, but it's Bobby. So guys, he's going to hang out. He's running marketing for our different companies. So he's going to start joining to help kind of try to get things more organized, but it looks like he bailed. He'll be back. All right. So with that being said, let's set the stage, Darren, and let's set this up for everybody. Cause I'm looking who's on. What's up? Jolene, John. It's 3 Johns, Jacob, David, Justin, Patrick. So I'm seeing quite a few people logging in. I know several of those people, and I know that some of those people already have employees, or they may be hiring employees. So let's just start from the beginning here. We're going to talk about your real estate business today, correct?
Yeah.
Okay, cool. And let's talk about what part, just like a 60-second, like what's your business like? What are you doing?
So we're fix and flip primarily, although this year I really want to get into buying a couple of rentals too, so I can start making some real passive income at some point in my life. But where I know that I'm holding myself back is I am trying to do everything, and I've probably listened to you and countless other people talk about how it's impossible to do everything, and I'm
Mhm.
still grinding it out. Like, no, I can do everything. But I really, probably November-ish of last year, I was like, dude, you can't do everything. So, um, I started analyzing or thinking about at least like not necessarily the stuff that's keeping me up at night, but definitely the stuff that I hate doing that like really takes my energy away if I sit down and have to do it. And
Yep.
that's the things that I want to get rid of. But I will say, after I read through just a couple of little bits of that report you sent me on that test that I took yesterday, I'm almost thinking that I may have been looking to hire the wrong person, like we had talked about yesterday. So, or the day before, maybe. But yeah, I'd be kind of interested to hear what you had to say about that too.
Yeah, cool. So what part of your business were you thinking about hiring?
So I wanted to hire an ISA, just for anybody that's not a real estate person. It's basically a person to man the phones, to outgoing calls, receive calls, follow up on leads, and basically get us in the door to have an appointment with that house seller. But I kind of almost am starting to think that I actually may be better at that, and I maybe need somebody to actually go, be an acquisitions person and go to that appointment in my place, to be honest.
So so when he said, guys, that are when you're listening to this, ISA is inside sales agent. Um, so Darren, it's interesting. So the bottom line is you feel like in your business, which in real estate, you're doing marketing, right? And so it's bringing in leads of sellers who may want to sell their property to you that's distressed so that you can fix and flip it, or potentially you might get into keeping some of them as rentals. But either way, you're trying to find good deals,
Yeah.
right? So you're doing marketing and it's generating prospects.
Hmm.
And you feel like one way or another, that's a bottleneck that
Oh yeah,
isn't.
I'm completely the bottleneck right now because I'm trying to manage the marketing. I'm trying to return the phone calls. I'm trying to go to the job sites, and when you have to do everything, then you either don't do anything, or something gets one ball gets dropped, or you're half-assed doing all of the balls or whatever.
Yeah, for sure. And so for it's there's two big pieces here. So one of them is volume. So it's like quantity, and one of them is like productivity or quality. And so in this respect, and let's talk through it because maybe this will help you kind of get to the back end of like who you think you want to hire. But but for those of you that are thinking about growing your team, this is especially, well, not especially, it's uniquely important at the beginning when you're building a team and you're hiring people for the first time into positions that you've never had before. Like later when your business, I think you and I talked about this over the weekend a little bit, Darren, but like there's really no failing in hiring, quite frankly, if you have the right perspective. I mean, if you do enough due diligence to get a halfway decent person into the halfway organized role and give them a half baked training plus a little bit of support, they're going to help somehow, some way, even if it's just learning what you do and don't like about that position and realizing, oh, I need this different type of personality, or I need these other kind of activities, or gosh, I didn't really need that at all because it created this other problem. The point is that it's that whole failing forward idea, so that even if you hire someone and they're gone in 3 to 6 months, which anyone who's not a good fit should be gone in 90 to 180 days at an absolute maximum on the back end. You can't let an okay person hang around in your business when you're small. There just isn't any room for it. Like we need good folks. They don't have to be great. It's really hard to build around all rock stars. That comes with its own set of challenges. But we can't just have okay people around, because when we invest in somebody, this is the first thing I want you guys to write down, is that whenever we're bringing someone on, there's an ROI. And so a lot of folks struggle with this concept. They see employees as an expense. You guys need to see it as an investment. Like that's definitely the first key I wanted to talk about today, is that no matter who you're hiring, it should be an investment. Even if it's an investment in an administrative assistant who absolutely won't affect the bottom line, but the only thing they're doing is chewing up busy work so you can have more free time, you're investing in them so you can have more free time with your family or whatever else you're doing, right? Like there is some kind of return typically in our business, unless it's like an administrative assistant for you or for another key employee. more than likely, even the administrative assistant who helps with sales should create some kind of revenue bump on the bottom line that is equal to, or more, hopefully double, triple, quadruple, or more of what you're paying that person annually. So let me give you guys a quick example. So even if I hired like a $30,000, like a $15 an hour assistant to come in that helped handle busy work, I would be looking for that $30,000 investment, that $15 an hour. I'd be looking to get a 3 to 5x return on that. Now, they're not going to do work that creates that more than likely, but the work they do that frees up the salespeople potentially, if you're running, say, a $500,000 or $1 million business, just if you have a salesperson that can go out and produce, say they're producing $500,000 a year in gross revenue. Well, if they can go out and do 20% more production by having an assistant, I've effectively invested 30 grand into an assistant, right? But that 20% increase on 500,000 is another $100,000. I've got over a 3x return on that investment. And so if you can't clearly see where your investment will impact the bottom line, especially if you guys are like solopreneurs or early on and building, just be really careful about making that higher. And so the number one thing, Darren, back to be thinking about is like, I'm not sure if I'm hiring the right person. Well, in the beginning, you probably could hire 2 or 3 different people, right? Like you could need help in any of us that have businesses under 5 million, 10 million could probably hire 2 or 3 different types of people at any given time. And none of those are bad hires, but only one of them is probably the best. 1 or 2 of them is probably the most strategic and most valuable hire you can make. So it's a balance of like, not only what I spend, but what my return is, also how they free me up. So we're going to get to what you said in a second, which was talking about, well, maybe I should do this other position because I did a psychological profile analysis on myself and I realized I need to put myself into my best use, right? Mm-hmm. And if you can hire either way, yeah, an acquisition person will cost you more in the bottom line than an inside salesperson. But actually, as a commission-only person in real estate, there'll be less, fixed costs potentially, unless you give them a draw or a base or something like that. But that's the first big point for everybody to realize is that bringing somebody on is an investment, not an expense, right? And the other thing is, whatever you're paying them, that's going to be spent for the year, say it's 30 grand or 100 grand if they're in sales, like whatever, you don't have to have all that money up front. So the $30,000 a year assessment or administrative assistant we're talking about in that example I just gave, I'm going to be looking for anyone to be breaking even with the contribution in my small business, or I'm going to be hoping for this. And I think you guys should all consider this as a rule of thumb. You may break it a little bit or bend this rule, but in 60 to 90 days, I'm going to want to be breaking even with what that return that I'm investing in them. And so what I mean by that is 30 grand a year, that $15 an hour is $2,500 a month. I'm looking for a clear path that somewhere around 60 days or going into that third month, I'm seeing the first, in a wholesale business, if or a fix and flip, you're making, what's your average gross profit on a deal, Darren?
About 25.
Okay. So on $25,000 and I'm spending 2,500 inside of that first 60 days or into that third month, I'm hoping that I've already gotten one more deal on contract that will get fixed and flipped and done inside of the first 10 months, which is pretty conservative, is my opinion, right? Like if you bring someone on who's just going to start helping with leads, somehow in 2 months, they've somehow cleaned it up so that you've gotten one more deal on the table that you wouldn't have had without them.
Yeah. That should be pretty doable for sure.
And so that deal has to flip by the time 10 months is over for you to break even on that person, because you're dropping $2,500 a month in them, right? Mm-hmm. So as soon as I get the second deal going in the third or fourth month, that'll drop a few months after that one. Effectively in the 12 months, I've got a 2-to-1 return, right? And then you're off to the races. And so the reality is, like, if this person throws one extra deal a quarter on the table, The first one pays for them. The next 3 is your 3x return, right? Well, really, it ends up being a 4 return, like a 4 to 1, because you're going to drop 30. You follow me what I'm saying? And so
Yeah.
this process of understanding how the ROI is going to come in play is really important for you guys to decide who you're hiring. Just because they give you an ROI doesn't mean they're the right person, but if they don't, you shouldn't be hiring them. And secondly, that ROI needs to be kicking in to where you can see where it's going to break even. It doesn't have to break even yet, but I'm going to want to see that inside of 60 days, no more than 90, no matter who, maybe in sales, if there's a longer cycle in the back, but I'm going to want to know that I'm set to break even and just keep growing from there to be getting ultimately probably like a 3 to 5x return is what I'm looking for on anybody I hire. So I bring a new sales guy on, even if he's going to make 75, 100 grand a year, I'm hoping he's throwing 3, 4, 5, 600 grand on the bottom line in gross revenue, right? Like if you bring a sales guy on and you're doing 25 per deal gross revenue, I'm looking for a guy like that. If he's going to, depends on how low level they want to be, but if you got a guy and you're going to have, or a gal that comes on and maybe has an opportunity to make 100 grand a year, I'm going to want to see that they can do 3 to 5 times that return to me. So I'm going to want to know that they can throw 300 on the bottom line, right? And so that's 12 deals at 25,000. So you hire a salesperson, they better be throwing a deal a month into your lab. You hire an inside person, they need to throw a deal a quarter in your lab. Does that make sense? Like,
yeah, absolutely.
To make sense, because here's the other piece. If you don't have a good front end system to deal with your prospects, this will, even if you're not in the exact real estate game like Darren, guys, if you're listening, here's the game. Like, how much harder would it be to find a good salesperson and ramp them up? Even if you're not a great fit for sales, can you fake it till you make it? Because I think it's easier to find an inside salesperson so that you're maximizing the leads coming in. And then what you're doing, then you're shifting your higher and better use to that sales position at first so that you can understand it. So you're doing it for the next 6 months while you're ramping, maybe not even that long, but 3 or 4 months while you're ramping the inside salesperson up next quarter. But you're putting your head down so that the work they're doing is turning into a return. But the whole time that you have your head down selling, even because you don't like it, or maybe you're not great at it, but you're doing it with the idea that you're perfecting, or the best you can, what needs to happen. You're paying attention to the objections you get. You're paying attention to the black eyes you get on the phone. You're paying attention to when you lose a deal. You're paying attention to when some lady cries and says, you saved my life. Like, that stuff happens in this business, right? Because we own some real estate businesses as well. So if you feel like you could bring a salesperson on and let them loose, you could do that. And you could go do what I would call setter, like inside sales. They're like setting it, like in volleyball, they're going to set it up. And then you got a closer who's going to spike, like a set and spike, but a set and close. So the setter closer model, almost any of you guys in business are going to run into this. Most times in the beginning, a setter is going to make more sense because the owner is going to be the closer, right? And so it doesn't always have to be that, especially if you're really bad at sales. Maybe you want to avoid that. But my guess is most of us got into this business and we're at least dangerous at closing. Even if we're not a great salesperson, we know our trade or our craft well enough to get in front of people. Now, if that's not you, 100%, you go ahead and hire a salesperson. This is by no means is it everybody, but just in general, most people that go out on their own and start a business are visionaries. And even if you're not a great salesperson, if you can cast vision, meaning you can see things and opportunities, you can talk to a prospect and you can get them to see the vision of like working together to an end, right? So let's circle back on that. The main thing we talked about so far is to start the process of making sure you're hiring the right person. We want to clearly see they're going to provide a return, an ROI. We're hoping that return is 3 to 5x. And I'm going to want to see that return. I'm going to want to see the light at the end of the tunnel within 60 to 90 days that we're breaking even and heading towards a multiple coming back. So those are the first 3 things that when you're bringing someone on, you're going to look at your business, Darren, like holistically, which I know you have. And you're going to say, I got all this crap to do. I got to send marketing out. I got to answer the phone. I got to analyze and negotiate deals. And then I've got I've got to do the closings and paperwork, and then I've got to do project management, and then I got to deal with reselling the properties on the back end. Like that's a flipping business. So there's like, 7 plates you're spinning right there, right? And you're saying that I'm just busy spinning all of them, and then one's dropping and whatever. So in general, when you're looking at that, I'm not going to get too deep into that part of it today, but you've honed in on the fact that like this front end acquiring the properties is where you want to focus. Quite frankly, you could look at a project manager in your business as one of, and maybe do you have somebody that helps manage projects?
I use a general contractor,
Okay.
but I'm managing him.
Okay. I'm just making this point that there's other levers you could pull in this business, and most of us have that, right? There's 3 buckets in any business. There's the front lead generation, there's sales, conversion, and then there's fulfillment. That's any of you guys listening, that's your business in a nutshell for the most part. So we're talking about going from where the lead generation turns into sales. Basically, you and I are talking about the sales bucket, but there's a hire that anybody could make pretty much in any one of those at any given time. There's strategic hires and administrative hires. So strategic hires are like managers, salespeople, right? Director level people that can do strategic type work. The administrative people are going to support the strategic people. In the beginning, you are the strategic and the administrative person in all 3 of those buckets. But in your business, you're doing whatever marketing. I'm sure it's like some combination of like mailers, right? And probably like maybe texting or cold calling or something like that. You're doing things like that. Then when that person calls in, we're in that sales bucket. So we're talking about who answers the phone and then who's closing. Those are 2 positions, that setter closer model, right? In the back, the fulfillment piece for you is transaction coordinating to make sure the closings happen, title work is clean, doing the design work, managing the contractor, getting the listing set up, negotiating the back end sale, doing the inspection response. Like that's fulfillment. So I want you guys to be aware of that in your businesses, where, as you're thinking about hiring or positioning your people, where does it make the most sense for you? Typically, this sales role is one of the earlier on things that someone may hire. The lead generation, a lot of times is outsourced to a vendor. Many times we're using vendors to do it. That's pretty strategic though, and it's pretty important, and it's costing us money. And so a lot of owners hold on to that one. The other strategic hire you guys may be considering early on, if it's not inside sales help and sales, would be in the fulfillment, where you would be looking at trying to figure out I close business, I get it locked up, I just get busy putting my head down, delivering my product or executing my service. Like if you're doing coaching or some kind of high-end, legal work, or you're a doctor or a nurse practitioner, whatever, you probably can't outsource the fulfillment very well because it's very, it's pretty high level, high detail, might be licensed type work. In yours, Darren, you probably don't want to put any schmo in there to figure out what to do at the house because you rehab the house wrong. You're not selling it. It's going to cost more than you thought, take longer than you thought, and sell for less money than you thought.
So that happens anyway.
So that's another piece, but I wanted to just briefly touch on that for you guys that are listening. So going back to where we are, let's talk about the next step. So just as a recap, we just talked about trying to look at these areas of the business, and we're going to hone in on who we're going to hire, right? Here's the second part. If you guys don't understand your business and you haven't intentionally paid enough and proactively paid enough attention to your business, you don't have to have Tranual or any of these crazy high level manuals built and all these online systems and processes and procedures, but you do have to have intentionally paid attention to your business and know that there's these buckets, there's departments, and there's activities that happen within those departments. And there's pros and cons of the different activities, right? There's expenses to them, there's timing to them. Those are what we would really look at as a business. A lot of people think they own a business because they got a tax ID, a bank account, clients, an office, revenue, a logo, a website. They got all the business cards, they have all these things. That's not a business. The business is the set of processes, procedures, right? It's the things that actually generate the income. And so it's the way you prospect to find people to to bring into sales and pitch them and close a deal, and then you fulfill the deal. So with that being said, this next piece, once I know who I'm going to hire, I have to know what department they're in, and I need to know what steps are occurring, the processes and systems that are going on in there, because it's whatever activities that need to be done by that person are the types of activities that we're going to build a profile around so we can go find the right person to do it. So if I've got a sales job, I don't want to hire an introvert. If they're administrative, I don't want to hire an independent thinker. If they're a transaction coordinator, well, that's a bad example. If I've got like a research person who's researching data for me and building lists and they're doing maybe like accounting or some kind of real detailed work, I don't want a super fast, rapid problem solver who has high three-dimensional thinking, and that person's trying to recreate the wheel all the time. Like I literally need, in administration, I need someone who's more accommodating. I need someone who processes logically, but a little more slowly, so they don't miss things, right? And if things are slow, they don't get bored. They actually enjoy it because they don't like missing things. And so what's really important, guys, a lot of you may have heard of DISC or Colby or Myers-Briggs or these different personality tests. Most of those tests 4 levels, 4 different pieces of your personality, right? A lot of times it has to do with if you're aggressive or reserved, assertive or reserved, type A, red. There's different ways to look at this. The second thing a lot of those tests is if you're introverted or extroverted, people-oriented or task-oriented. And by that, it doesn't mean you like to talk a lot, right? What it means is you enjoy connecting with people. That's important for you guys to understand. Extroversion is that you enjoy and want to connect with people. So someone who's too extroverted in a certain job will make people that they work with uncomfortable because they're going to be like, dude, I don't want to talk about like what my family did this weekend. Like I just needed to get water at the water cooler, and now you're talking to me for 15 minutes. Like I got shit to do today. Like I got to go work, right? So that extroversion though is important. I want you guys to remember that because I'm gonna come back to it. So most personality tests are gonna check if you're assertive or not, if you're extroverted or not. Then they're gonna want to know how structured you are. Do you like rules? Do you not like rules? Do you follow structures? Are you more flexible? Right? And so that's a big one for administration. And then finally, the fourth one can be pretty different for different types of people, but or different types of tests, I mean. But many times the fourth component that is being tested is within your personality. Let me try to think of a good way to explain this. It's how well do you take direction. It's a little bit like structure, but it's more like when you process things, are you more detail oriented or are you more big picture thinking? Right. And so do you like to get in and research and figure all the little details out? Or do you like to, before you do anything, or do you like to get your hands dirty and just do trial and error? So there's a different aspect. That's a harder one to nail down because that's what makes a lot of the different tests unique. Almost all of them test assertive, extroversion, and rule following. That fourth one can be very unique. We test particularly, I'm going to show you guys one, and Darren, I think it's cool if I bring yours up. If not, I can bring mine up. But we use a report that's a company we own. It's called Team Architects. We test several, up to 8 different personality traits because there's a lot of nuances in there and it matters. And so we also test cognition. So if you guys are going to use something like DISC, you need to find a piece that's like cognition. And what I mean by cognition is how you process problems, how you logically think, how you interpret things, like connecting the dots and seeing the big picture. This is pure gold, you guys. So the second component outside that first one about is there an ROI, how long and all that, the second big thing to take notes on today is what is the psychological profile of the person who best fits the role that I'm filling, and that's based on the activities that person is going to be undertaking for you. So when you hire someone, you have to understand the role really well because if you don't, you'll bring someone on who may not fit very well, and then later you're going to wish they were a different kind of person, and it would really be dumb luck if you brought the right person on without knowing ahead of time what kind of person I need from a personality standpoint. And the more detailed you can go in your personality test, the better. And if you can add cognition, that's even way better, because someone who processes things really quickly gets bored with mundane things. And so if you're hiring them in a job that's kind of repetitive, they'll get bored and their mind will start recreating the wheel. Like Darren, you and I were talking about that this weekend, right? And then that person will start asking a lot of questions about, like, why don't we try this and why don't we try that? And you're going to be frustrated. You're going to be like, look, like, I want you to like come up with ideas, but I need 80% of the time, I need you just to follow what I told you. I trained you a certain way, go do it. But I do want you to pay a little bit of attention to innovate. But mostly I want you to follow the system. Now, if their cognition's too low, you're going to train them. They'll never innovate. And they'll go out and just try to do what you said without really understanding it very well. And then what they'll do is come back and ask what you think are dumb questions. They're going to get it. They'll be bobbing their head in the meeting, and then they go out on their own and they call back and they're like, well, this happened. I didn't know what to do. And you're like, we already talked about that. Like, or, hey, I told you that one time. So someone who processes things slower and has a lower vocabulary, which is another cognition thing we like to test, means they don't understand, they don't grasp the words as well as you may think they do. So they don't grasp concepts as well. And so they take longer you have to do training after training. So like a kid, I'm looking on here, many of you guys have kids that I know that are on today. How many times you have to tell them to like not interrupt you while you're on a phone call, right? Or like, if you eat something, put your dishes away. Or if you get ketchup out, put it away. Like, don't leave it out, right? Like, it's funny that these things you have to beat in their head over and over. Hey, you walking through the house and you pass an empty room and the light's on, turn the light off. Like, or when you leave a room and no one else is in it, turn the light off. And you think, how much sense does that make? Like, why do I have to tell you 100 times? Well, because first of all, it's not important to your kids. That's a whole nother psychological thing we're not going to get into today. But with the people in your business, when they don't think the way you think and have the knowledge you have, and if they're slower cognition, that stuff doesn't click with them. They're like, oh yeah, I know Darren wanted me to do that, but they don't really understand why. Maybe they can't because they don't process that deeply. So you just have to repetitively beat it in their head that it's like, oh, I'm supposed to do this every time I talk to someone. Why does your sales guy not ever get the email for a client? Because Dave Short, I just saw a comment coming in that you said that sounds like my wife. This is being recorded, Dave. I want to make sure you know that. But when you see something like that, when an employee, you have to understand that it's not because they don't appreciate what you told them or whatever. They may not understand it the way you think that you explained it, right? And so cognition is just a humongous piece in this whole process. And so, again, to recap on the second component, we've got to completely understand what I would call an avatar. So it's like the unicorn person who doesn't exist, but they're 100% perfect fit for the job you're trying to hire. And the only way you can do that is if their job role is extremely defined. So it's in one of the three buckets. You're in fulfillment and or let's do sales, like you're talking about, like you're in my sales team, you're an inside sales rep. You will be the front face of the company. You've got to be polite and you've got to be cheerful. And I need you to be good to be on the phone. I need you to be extroverted, because if you're introverted, you're not going to, not that you can't talk to people, but you're not going to enjoy it, right? So I need someone who's slightly extroverted, but if they're off the charts extroverted, so these things aren't on and off, guys. This is another sub point here to really understand. If someone's extroverted like slightly, that would be great for an inside sales rep, because I need them to be kind of middle of the road. Because if they're too extroverted, they're just going to want to talk to everybody all day. They're going to spend 30 minutes on the phone with every prospect. They've got to be a little bit task focused, like kind of in the middle, so that they're able to connect and they kind of enjoy connecting, but they also still have an attention to the fact that Darren wants me to talk to 20 people a day, like 20 good conversations. I may have to do 50 phone calls to get through to 20 people, and I need to qualify like 5 of them a day, where I get it all the way down to what a qualified prospect looks like, where they're ready to sell. They want to talk to us. I collected all the information Darren likes to know ahead of time. and I moved it in the bucket to the closer. And so like 50 calls down to 20 conversations, down to only 5 people that actually made it through the gauntlet, so that you're not inundated with 50 people to talk to and you're overwhelmed with your marketing, right? So that person, though, again, this is really important for you guys to understand. The first level, breaking into this whole like people business, which as a business owner, you're not in business if you don't understand people. It's part of sales, it's part of leadership, it's part of management, hiring, building a team. All this is so important. But the first level of getting in is understanding that these personality traits matter, but the levels of where they're at matter. So again, I need someone who's kind of like in the middle of the road, introverted and extroverted, who enjoys a good conversation, but knows that they're supposed to get off the phone in less than 10 minutes on average, right? And so if someone's on the phone for 20 or 30 minutes and they're a good prospect, that's cool, because you're going to have just as many that you're on the phone for 5 minutes and you're like, this isn't right. This isn't a good lead for us. They're not ready. So they've got to understand that. And here's why. These nuances are so important, because if you're the person who is the right personality fit and right cognition, let me say it this way. If you hire someone who's not a good personality fit, like they're close, especially, it's weird. Like it's almost worse when they're close, because you can't identify that they're off. They're just not quite there. But when your personality and your cognition aren't in alignment, it's a drag on your energy. It creates just a little bit of friction. It's like sleeping with the pea underneath the mattress. Like things seem okay in the beginning, and then a few days in, you're like, that pee's kind of, every time I lay down, it kind of bothers me. 2-3 months in, it's a massive, annoying, glaring issue, right? And so this friction that happens because you've got someone in a position they don't really fit in only gets worse over time. And the closer they are to being a fit, but not really a fit in the beginning, the longer it takes to identify, which is bad for your business. And so when someone's a fit and they're in their cognition wheelhouse, and they're of how this job, the pace of this job is what I like. It's not too fast, it's not too slow, right? The logical things I have to do aren't hard for me, or they're not too easy where I get bored. That's a good fit. The way that I communicate with people, I enjoy, because I'm learning and I'm able to connect, and it's not too complex, it's not too easy, right? Like those things are so important, because when I'm in the wheelhouse, I get energy. And so like your employee or contractor probably working for you at the end of the day feels good about what they did. Doesn't mean they're not ready to go home, but they'll feel good about it because they were in their wheelhouse during the day, because they're a good fit. If they're not, it just saps your energy, right? Part of this is when you're doing things, when you know yourself really well, you can see like, where you're fit, where you're not. And then you can fight that urge to lose your energy, because you're like, I'm gonna have to fight through this because I hate making calls and I'm not a sales guy, but I got to do this for my business right now. So I'm not doing it to make the calls particularly. I'm making the calls because it's making the sales, but I'm doing it because I'm honing the craft. I'm researching. I'm taking notes. I'm tick marking how many calls it takes to get one connect, and how many connects it takes to have a good conversation, and how many good conversations it takes to get a good lead, right? And so when you put your head down in a business and you're hustling and grinding, just do it with the intention of tracking everything that's going on and learning, because what you're doing is building that position so you can more easily be like, I need someone who's cool with being on the phone all day and doesn't mind getting their ear raped by someone with drama. Because let's face it, if you guys are in the wholesale business, the only time the phone rings, 9 times out of 10 is drama on the other end of it, right, Darren? Like,
Yep.
100%. And so if you're the kind of person that sees that as drama, it will drain you. If somebody sees that as like, oh my gosh, I have empathy for this and I really want to understand them, and I'm also like very in line with our business, so I'm going to be like, I understand you. You complete, I complete you. And then I'm like sliding in you got to talk to Darren, right? This person, this inside salesperson will not only be like friendly and a little bit extroverted, but a little bit task oriented, but they'll also be calm enough that they can let that person vent on the phone, because they may be having to vent, right? So I don't want someone who's super expressive that's going to talk over people. They need to be a little bit calm, right? Because they're going to have to. So when I build that profile out, and then I can train them more easily, and they get it because it fits in their wheelhouse. So that's those are the first two big components of what I want you guys to understand in bringing somebody on. So Darren, like, what are you thinking after us talking through that? Because I know one thing you said you were struggling with is, should I bring on a inside salesperson or outside salesperson? Has this helped at all in your thinking?
Yeah. So just the money thing alone has me thinking, and I'm just like, that's going to make me so uncomfortable with, if I had an acquisitions agent, that it would probably drive me more crazy than I am right now. So I think the best place for me to start is with the ISA, even though eventually I've got to get to that, the acquisitions agent as well. I mean, and kind of like we had talked about Saturday, then to a project manager, so that I can just basically completely remove myself other than the management and leadership of the people in the business.
So I think a lot of people are going to go through the same kind of process. And by the way, guys, besides ratting your wife out like Dave Shore did there, but there's several people that are jumping on here. I think if you guys have questions, just use the chat or the Q&A if you want, or the chat if you have questions, because we're going to wrap here in a few minutes with this side of things, in about 5 minutes, 10 minutes, and then I'll have a little bit of time for Q&A. So I do think a lot of people will be in that boat though, Darren, like you were just talking about. And I think that within the business, if you guys aren't tracking your KPIs, and I know you know this stuff, Darren, like, I don't know how well you do it, right? Like, because I haven't seen your KPI stuff, but I know you know this stuff, and I think you do it. But in your business, if you guys say, hey, I want to do $1 million this year, and I make $10,000 a deal, whatever I sell, I got to sell 100 of those things, right? Mm-hmm. Or if I make $100, I got to sell 10,000 of those things, whatever the case is, whatever your business is, if you're listening to this. So if I know that, and I know enough about my business, which is why the KPIs are so important, I know that to get, let's use I got to sell 100 things and make $10,000 on each one to get $1 million. Well, if I'm only selling 5 a month right now, that's 60 in a year. But to sell 100 of something in a year, you got to sell 8.33 a month. So I'm probably not going to jump from 5 to 8.33 in the first month and then sell 8.33 a month for the year. So as a business owner, one of the things you have to do is get good at reverse engineering the end in mind back into an action plan. And the only way you can do that effectively is to know some of your numbers. You don't have to know all of them. But what I may know is, I'm going to write some of this down. So if I want to wind up the year having done 100 deals and making 10,000 a pop, well, let's use your example. You want to do $1 million, let's say, and you were saying you make 25, right? So every 4 deals you do is 100 grand, right?
Yeah.
So I got to do 40 deals, correct?
Yeah, that's a lot of math, but yeah.
At 25K. You guys can pause and rewind this on Facebook if you need to get the calculator out. 4 times 25 is 100. You just add a couple extra zeros to get to $1 million. So I've got to do 40 renovation flips, making 25 a pop to get $1 million. So, right. And so when I look at that number and how do I get 40 deals, right? I may have to get 3 offers accepted to get 1 deal because they fall out in inspection responses. In wholesaling, I hope it's more like at least 5 or 6, but 7 or 8 or 9 out of 10 deals you get stick. Just depends on how good your dispositions. But in flipping, I know that you might end up renegotiating after you do an inspection on a house and you're like, oh, I can't pay that anymore, right? And the seller won't work with you. And so let's say so you got to get 3 contracts, 3 sellers that agree to sell to you to get every deal, which I don't know if that number's right for you. So now I got to get 120 contracts this year. So to get a contract, I got to make an offer. I'm not going to get every offer I make. So now I'm thinking, well, I'm not going to offer on everything, but I'm going to offer on some stuff that I take a flyer, not knowing if I'm going to get it, because in this market, you kind of have to. So now I'm thinking, man, I might only get 1 or 2 or 3 out of 10. It's probably like 1 out of 10, wouldn't you say?
Yeah.
2 out of, I mean, we try to close 2 out of 10, but as a wholesaling business, I don't care so much what I get on contract as long as it's profitable, because I can go find one of 1,400 active buyers or 500 realtors that our guy Brad works with at any given time. He can go sell as long as it's a real deal. It doesn't have to fit our model. Well, if you're flipping your own, I'm sure you only want certain neighborhoods and certain price points, and you're okay in other price points, but only if it doesn't have a basement or it can't be in a floodplain, or you're going to run into stuff like that, right? So I'll jump on that question here in a minute, Dave. So now I'm thinking, if I get 1 in 10, these are going to be daunting numbers for you. But if you need to get 120 houses on contract to do $1 million, that's 1,200 offers, right? And I'm going to call this a linear. That's 100 a month. So that's roughly 25 a week.
And you're not done doing the math yet either, because you still got to make, contacts with people.
So yeah, I mean, think about that number, right? But this is the level you guys have to do in your business, because if you don't get to this and you're like, I want to do $1 million and you just start hiring people, it's not going to work. If it does, I say this all the time, it's pure dumb luck. Like, I've got to get serious about understanding some of these metrics. So if I make 1,200 offers, I'm going to offer at most on half the qualified leads I talk to. Right. So that means I got to generate twice as many leads. And a lead is someone who's actually qualified, like they actually own a house and want to talk to me. I might send out marketing, and some of the people that respond just want to call and tell me how much they hate me for sending mail to their house. And they'll literally, if they can find me, they'll kill me, and murder my children. It's unbelievable, right? When you guys do marketing, what happens? And so now I'm like, I've got to generate maybe 2 times that response. We're talking like generating a lot of response, right? And spending money. So now what I'm getting to in this business, I'm going to wrap this part for you guys, is I'm going to have to know that if I spend a certain amount of money or do a certain amount of things, it generates a certain amount of response. Out of that response, I got a certain amount of leads. Out of those leads, I'm going to make a certain amount of offers. During those offers, I got to evaluate to get there, right? I got to evaluate a certain amount of deals. I got to make a certain amount of offers to get a certain amount of houses on contract, just to get a certain amount of closings. Now I got the other part of my business is I got to run projects, and I got to keep time, materials on track, and I got to deal with other issues. I got a physical budget, money. I've got the actual scope of work, and I've got the duration. I've got 3 things in that renovation business that I care about. And then underneath each of those 3, there's several sub bullet points. But here's my point, guys. When I'm looking at my business and I'm like, who should I hire? If you're deciding who to hire based on how you feel, it's literally like saying, hey, I want to lose weight. And you guys have heard me talk about this before, but I say I'm going to do some crazy diet and I don't eat for a day and I'm starving, and I just run into the grocery store with no plan, no list. I'm coming out with pizzas and chips because I'm starving. You know what I mean? I'm not, because if I just say I'm going to do keto, what does that mean? What does keto mean? Like, you may know what it means, but like, what do I need to buy? Am I buying keto prepared meals? Do I buy certain ingredients? How long does it take? Like, there's a lot of planning that would have to go in to do something. Just like if I'm going to hire someone who's going to be successful, I've got to know what I'm getting into, and my business will tell me, even if you don't know exactly. So Darren, I don't know if this is making you more confused about what you want to do or helping, but like, the idea is like, if I want to end up here, I reverse engineer that backwards, right, over to here. And I can say, hey, now I can look back over what I just reverse engineered. And I'm thinking, well, I can analyze 10 properties a week, and I can make 8 or 10 offers a week, and I can probably talk to 20 or 30 people. But in my projections, this July, we're going to need to be talking to 50 people a week and making 30 offers a week. Like, I've just identified a time frame when I know I'm going to need someone else helping with certain things, and I'm not guessing. I literally know the activities, talking to people, analyzing, making offers. Like, I identified exactly where the breakdown is going to be, right? So I just have to go backwards to where my current team can't hang. And then from there, I know I got to have somebody up and running. And so then from there, how long does it take to train them? And how long does it take to get an ad out and get them going? And so now I know this is going to be daunting for you guys if you haven't hired or haven't done it effectively or build a team. This is what you have to get to as a business owner, to the point where your business, think about your metrics like this. And by the way, if you guys aren't really good at metrics, if you go to the ceonation.com, it's like the main thing on the page. It's called the Ultimate KPI Guide. It's free. It's like 25 minutes. It's a super great download to help you guys with metrics. But like think about the numbers in your business like a kid. Again, this is for parents in the group. If all you're doing is collecting a handful of numbers, or you're not like getting much out of your business, like looking at your bank account balances, your credit card bills, and or your bills from your vendors, and then your credit card statement to see what you're spending, and then your bank account to see what the balance is. If that's about the gist of what you're doing, that's like having an infant. Your KPIs are an infant. And if it's hungry or tired, it just cries and you don't even know what it needs. Now, over time, you kind of figure, oh, that's a hungry cry, or that's a change the diaper cry, but it's still guessing. It's not effective. And and it's loud and it hurts your ears and they're upset and you feel like it's not effective, right? So if you can progress that to starting to understand, well, how many offers do I need? How many marketing pieces do I need? How many, how many pitches do I have to make before I close a deal? How long does it take to get paid on a deal? If you start understanding these numbers, it's like progressing your infant baby to like a toddler, to where they can at least tell you, like, I'm tired, I'm hungry. And then later you can progress that even more to where you start taking these numbers and dividing them against each other and looking at ratios and looking at second layer and getting the more advanced numbers. Once you start building the team, two things happen. You remove yourself from the day-to-day to the point where you can think and process and look for this. Secondly, the game speeds up because you have other people doing crap instead of you doing it. They'll do more than you and they'll track the numbers better than you. And so when the game speeds to that point, now I can make better decisions. I have better data, right? And so this is that third big component of what I wanted to talk about today with you guys, is the business will tell you who to hire. You may not know it yet, but when you have the end in mind, reverse engineer it back from a money goal, which, by the way, money and time goals should be set based on what kind of life you want to lead, but that's a whole nother meeting. But I reverse engineer that into like literally physical activities of lead gen, sales, and fulfillment. I know the physical activities that need to be done in here to lead to a certain end. I can literally just be like, okay, what do I need more of? Probably you need multiple people. Which one do you need more urgently? And which one is cheaper? Which one's easier to train? Which one's easier to replace if you have a problem? Who's easier to find? So that's why I'm saying about inside sales. Yeah, you could go either way right now, Darren. But like, if you go inside sales, that person's easier to find, they're cheaper to pay, they're quicker to train. I wouldn't say they're less important. In fact, it might be more important. But I also know that one of the other things to keep in mind is that when I bring a sales guy on, if it's now for you versus like in 3 or 4 months, once you've spent 3 or 4 months being more focused in sales and you more know what needs to happen, and you have the front end that's generating better qualified setting leads for that, how much better would it be to bring someone in later when you're like, dude, I know exactly what you need to do. And I'm putting qualified leads in your lap and the thing's running. I want to plug you into it instead of, you know what I mean? Instead of try to throw you in and figure it out as we go. So not only you could do either way, but it's cheaper and easier to find this person. They're easier to replace. It kind of makes sense to get more ready for that other person. So like, right. By the way, that plan also makes better sense for your business because it's a higher revenue generating activity for you to be knocking the sales out than it is to be setting it.
Right.
Right. So do you have any, so I'm going to see I had a couple questions pop in. Darren, what are you thinking after hearing this? Like,
I'm thinking I need to rewatch this first. No, man, it's a lot of good information, and definitely, like you were just saying, like I'm going to get the most value and have the best opportunity to learn how to hire and how to train at that ISA, that inside salesperson. So, because again, even if they suck, I can replace them easier than I can replace, somebody who's making commission by going out to the house. So, yeah, I think you're 100% right. I just got to suck it up and continue, getting better at the house, but I, need somebody to tee things up for me. I think that, because if there was more things teed up, then I can be a little less concerned with how good I am at the house because I'm at more houses.
Or if there's less things teed up, from the standpoint of
better things,
everything's teed up for you right now because you're talking to everybody. When it's later, when it's less people, you can spend more time with less people.
Yeah.
You know what I mean?
That makes sense. Mm-hmm.
So in sales, by the way, guys, if any of you are going to hire a sales rep, I can't tell you, like, it varies based on what kind of business you're in, but most of you guys are in real estate as I look on here, or some level of it. Any salesperson needs their lead bank, their active leads needs to be contained to somewhere around 10 or 20, no more than 40 or 50. If it's a faster, lower dollar, faster volume, but like, you can't have hundreds of people in a database and expect your salesperson to be on top of it, or you. You need to have a way to assign an active lead, have a sales process that they follow to find out if you're going to do business now or later, and close it off and kick them out. They've got to unassign them because they've got, at any given time, we call it a lead bank, but their lead bank needs to be small enough that he can tell me, oh, Darren's got 2 kids and they're grown, and Darren was in the services and he has a gym and a real estate business, but he got sick of the rentals and now he wants to sell it. And like, right, if you responded to someone's marketing, some of these things I just said is because I'm getting to know you. Like, if I'm in sales and I'm trying to buy one of your rental properties or one of your flips you decided not to do, I would have to know that level of like, well, he's really busy and he's trying to hire his own guy right now and he doesn't have time for this project. Like, if I can't speak that level of detail, I'm not building the rapport that I need to gain the trust that I need to have a real conversation with you about giving you advice on what decision to make. Because I'm not going to make the decision for you in sales. I'm helping you make a decision. And so be careful when you guys hire sales, not to get, too overloaded, allow them to get too overloaded with leads. Because here's what happens. You bring someone on, you're like, cool, I want to do more revenue. And you just do more marketing. I can tell you hiring an inside salesperson is way cheaper and it's way better money spent if you're trying to grow sales right now and you don't have someone in this inside qualification lead management role, no matter what business you're in. You will, and the second thing is to that person, when they're not busy with that, they should be following up with every old lead you have, because most of sales is timing. Doesn't matter what you say on the phone. If their timing isn't right, they're not going to do it. And when the timing is right, you almost can't say the wrong thing at the right time to the right person, right? If they're like, I don't care if you're a douche, my tax sales tomorrow, I got to get a contract. Whereas you were eloquently like telling them everything about how great you are and why they should work with you 6 months ago, they weren't ready. And so this inside sales, also a very sneaky, great thing for them to do is spend the back end of their time on what I would call post-mortem, which is like when leads are getting kicked out from the actual closer that didn't close. They could be checking in. Hey, I'm really sorry. Darren said you guys couldn't put a deal together. Is there anything we can do? And then 6 months, if it's 30 days or 6 months, whatever, calling them back. Hey, you still got that house? That inside person not only cleans up the front end, but they can help with follow-up. And those 2 things alone, you can double your business out of that without spending any more money on marketing. You got to have enough marketing flow for it to count. But once you do, inside sales qualification and back end follow-up is way more effective at growing revenue than adding more money to spend. Especially if you're already not effective at it. When you add more leads, you just get too busy and you're spread thin and like nobody gets helped, right? So all right, I'm already in an hour. I knew this was going to run a little long, but let's wrap this up. If you guys have any questions, looks like Darren already answered one. Yeah, John, he said ditto. I need to rewatch this. I know there's a lot of info, but let's do this. I want you guys to see something. This is not a sales pitch for our Team Architects company, but I want you to see what we're talking about. I think it will help with a live example. And Darren's been gracious enough that we're going to pull up his assessment that he just did. And I got a little surprise for you, Darren, on it, by the way.
Okay.
So what we did, and hold on one second, share my screen. this is back to that second point of understanding the person you want to hire. Here's the level of detail that if you guys can get to, that's great. So this is a report. Darren took an assessment, which wasn't a lot of fun, was it, Darren?
It was mind bending.
Yeah, it's not that bad, I guess, but it's
No.
not fun. It's 40 minutes, but it's very detailed, right? And
some of it was pretty intense, like just the thought involved in trying to get the questions answered.
and I would tell you guys this before people start dropping at the hour here. If you're going to use testing, which if you don't, it's you're literally like playing with fire, and you're gonna if your hiring works more than 1 or 2 out of 10, it's just sheer luck. When you use any kind of assessment, try to use something that the price barrier doesn't prohibit you from checking all candidates, because some of them are expensive. You got to pay per use. But instead of using your human, this is a huge one for you guys to pay attention to. You go to all this trouble to build out the avatars, right? And know what you need to do and go and try to hire the right person because your business told you who to hire and all that stuff, right? But then if all you do is put it on Facebook and be like, hey, I'm looking to hire, and it's all this fluffy, looking for a rock star to join my dynamic real estate team, like, you're not casting the right net. You need to be using Indeed or ZipRecruiter. You need to be pay for ad spend. You need to get the most recruits, or recruit the most candidates you can, so you cast a wide net. You need to use an effective job ad so you get the right people. It's like sending out it's like people in foreclosure sending out like an absentee mailer to them, like, hey, you sick of your rental property? And they're like, I don't own a rental property. I'm in foreclosure. Like, they may still call you and be like, well, do you buy foreclosures too? But it's not a good message. When you put a bad job out, you might get some people coming in, but it's not the best job ad. But skipping past that, if you can utilize some kind of testing on the front end, instead of saying, hey, I'm going to use my human judgment to look at a resume, decide who to talk to all these people, and then boil it down to using my human judgment to get it down to the top 3 to 5 or 6 people, and then have those people take an assessment. First of all, you're going to be really pissed at all the time you spent to get them there if they score really low. Secondly, you're going to realize, like, you might have missed a bunch of people along the way, right? And so if you can put the assessment on the front end, that all candidates take an assessment to make sure they have the personality, cognition, behavioral traits needed first, and then spend time interviewing them. And then when you interview them, you already know who they are, kind of. And the more that time can be spent on culture and fit and core values and specifics about the job, and then compensation. Those are the things that you want to spend the time. Like, do we fit as a culture? Do you resonate with my core values? Do you understand what this job really is? Do you have, experience that says you can be good at this? Does my compensation plan excite you? Or does it work for you at a minimum, right? Like, that's what the interview needs to spend the time on. So what I would propose to you guys is use some kind of mechanism on the front end to filter the best you can, so that the only time you spend time on the phone interviewing anybody, you already know that they're probably a decent fit. And so this kind of report that we use, so this is, as you guys can see, we crunched a 40-minute assessment, spit out a bunch of characteristics about Darren. And this is where we took those characteristics and we overlaid it against an ideal leadership avatar. These things up here are the higher impact traits we care about, medium and low. They're weighted. As a leader, if you can't logically problem solve, I'm not following you. The first time I realized that you can't solve a problem and you're saying crap that doesn't make sense, like, I'm not following you as a leader, and you're not leading your team effectively. Spatial visualization is 3-dimensional thinking. It's like, can I come up with multiple solutions for one problem? Can I see a problem in a different light? If your spatial visualization is too high, like mine is super high, and that sounds cool, I'm not patting myself on the back, because I also rethink the wheel sometimes when I don't need to. And my business partner, Brian, might be thinking, geez, what we have works pretty well. Why are we redoing, why are we spending an hour talking about this thing that we don't need to fix, right? Like, it ain't broke, don't fix it. Well, people with high spatial visualization and super high logical problem solving and really high rapid problem solving, they like to fix problems that aren't broke. And that is a colossal waste of time. I do like someone that logically solve things step by step, And if you're low, it doesn't mean you're bad at problem solving. What it means is you might be more into trial and error. You might just start trying crap to see what, throw mud on the wall. Some of you guys on the call may be like that. Darren's got a high prop. Darren sees logical steps and can just follow them in succession to get to a solution, which is great. Your spatial visualization, although it's probably on the lower end of what you could probably be a little more creative. We talked about your military background probably affecting this, because a career military guy has been taught to not think outside the box because people die when you think outside the box. But yours is good, like it fits, right? And then your adaptability, we do want someone who's pretty independent, because a leader can't be affected by all the people around them, but they need to be a little bit accommodating, because you got to be, you got to be able to hire people, and then you want to listen, you want to hire smart people and then listen to them, right? Like, you're going to have to watch this, but you're not off by much. That's why this is yellow instead of a big red X.
Okay.
Right. And I'm not going to get into all these guys with you guys, but this is the level of detail that not only do you choose who to interview, so you don't waste time interviewing people that aren't a fit, but also when I hire someone, I choose based on this. So scientifically, I know they can do it. During the interview, I talked about core values and I lined up compensation. I've got literally a 5 times higher, 500% increase in probability that this hire will work out. Harvard, Wharton, somewhere in there between the stats we've been pulling with Team Architects, our company, is that you'll go from somewhere around an 18% chance if you're using like a disc with an unstructured interview to more like a 55 to almost 60% chance by utilizing structured interviewing process along with cognition and deeper level personality testing. So it's a much higher chance probability that the person will succeed. They still may not work, because what we didn't talk about was the fact that you have to train them and manage them and lead them. So many people have gotten hired who are a good fit, and the owner didn't know how to train them and lead them and manage them and ran them into the ground. Or they hired the right person at the wrong time, which I told you, Darren, could be hiring a great acquisitions guy, but you can't figure out lead flow. And they just can't make enough money because they're not getting enough good leads because you don't know marketing. Or I'm not saying you don't, but you might hire a project manager in your business, but like your acquisitions is screwed up and there's nothing for him to do. And you're like, well, I can't keep paying you because I need more projects. Sorry. And then he was a great fit. So all the stuff has to work in combination. And there's all these traits. Like I could just run down here and say, hey, as a leader, Darren, you're probably sometimes going to have to try to pay more attention to your people because you're very task oriented. People are going to want to know that you're connecting to them a little bit when you do build this person. So slow down, spend a little more time, make yourself pay attention. Like ask them how family's going. You know what I mean? Like It's not just about how many calls did you make. It's like, hey, how are you feeling about this? Like, you have to be a little more touchy feely. You need to be a little bit more, not a lot, but a little more accommodating. Down here, there's a couple of things where you're a little bit off. You're pretty reserved. You might need to be a little more aggressive. People will walk on you if you don't, right? Or you'll keep a hire around longer than you should. You are intense. This intensity level is telling me that you may convey extreme urgency at all times. Like this has got to get done now. What's going on? And it's not really that important, right? You might need to modulate your response. You're very skeptical. By the way, if it's possible, I might be slightly more to the left than you.
I'm impressed.
Yes. My kids hate it because they're like, hey, Dad, blah, blah, blah. And I'm like, are you sure? I don't believe anything that anybody says, right? Until I research it myself. I've had to be like, okay, cool. I still don't believe them, but I'm not going to let them know it. Cool. And then I go research it. And if I find out they're wrong, but it doesn't affect their life, I don't come and tell them, hey, by the way, I Googled that. I Snoped it and found out that that's a made up thing going around the internet. People get mad at me when they like Bill Gates is the Antichrist and he has a patent with 666 in it. People send me stuff like that. You know what I mean? About putting body chip. I'm like, and he's injecting all the vaccines for COVID or injecting people. I'm like, you've got to be kidding me. Like, you really think that's a thing? Sorry if anyone on here is going to unfollow me on social now, but yeah, Bill Gates is going to make a lot of money with this, but he's trying to help people in general. He may have in his head, he may think, well, if there's less people in the world, there's less resources being tapped. That might not be a bad thing. And we may not agree with that, but he's not the Antichrist, right? So somewhere in there, your skepticism is going to be like, well, why even call this person back? I already know what's going to happen. Or, well, I'm sure this contractor is going to screw me at some point, so I'm going to treat him as such, right? There's some of that'll happen. You're expressive, which I don't actually mind. That just means people know where they stand with you at all times, which is really good. And structure, this is probably military background again, but you like rules, you like structure, you prefer things to be structured. If you hire people that are very flexible, you might get a little frustrated because they're not going to want to fill out their sheets, their reports. They may not be 10 minutes early to a meeting because you're late. If you're not 10 minutes early, like that may not be the way they operate. So you might need to understand that, right? And so the last thing I'm going to leave you guys with is understanding this kind of level of detail of what you need to hire, who, when, and then analyzing your people to this point not only will make you more successful in hiring, but this stuff is so key to know going into the future to manage the relationship with this person. Like if you and I work together, Darren, I would show you my report and I would want you to understand me and I would understand you and I would realize you're intense and expressive, you're skeptical. So, right, I'm not going to be offended if you kind of come at me with like some pretty direct comments because that's who you are. That's cool. It won't bother me. I know you're reserved, so I might need to pull out of you. What are you really thinking? It's why you sat here quietly this entire time, right? So you're just listening to me. I might need to be like, dude, what do you think? Tell me. Because you're not giving me anything to work with. I also know you're skeptical. So if I come to you, I might be like, hey, by the way, I just taught you all this crap. And here's the Harvard Business Review where you can go read a 20-page report on why what I told you is real. So that, you know what I mean? Yeah. And or not ask you to make a decision today because being skeptical, you might want to go research yourself. If I was going to try to ask you to like partner on some deal with me, I got to give you space to decide because you're not the optimistic person who's all the way over here isn't great either because they think everything's going to work out. You hire too optimistic of a person. If you got a construction business and you hire that person and they're a project manager, here's what happens. They come back and tell you, hey, yeah, that guy, that sub, I know he's running a few days behind right now, but don't worry. He said he's going to get everything caught up this weekend. He's going to work on Saturday. And yeah, he's good. We're good. So go ahead and tell the inspector to show up on Monday morning. Yeah, you know what's going to happen? That optimistic guy, because he doesn't does he call the guy Friday and remind him, hey, you said you're going to work tomorrow. You're going to be there? Before it's too late to call the inspector and reschedule. So Friday before 5, when's the last time you can call inspector? You might need to check in with that vendor at 3:00 on Friday because on Wednesday he said he was going to do it. But on Friday afternoon, he's like, I don't know. But the optimistic guy who's highly people-oriented isn't going to be that great at making that judgment. So you got to know that about your people or things get screwed up, right? So this report, by the way, just as I'm showing you guys, just so you can see what we do with them, it's not this page. We go down and we break down every category about what it means. And we want to get to this level of understanding the people that we're going to hire to come on and like literally trust them. That like marketing for a person and instead of analyzing a deal or a project for your business, like analyzing a candidate that you're going to hire who's going to become part of your work family. Like this is reaching into your family's pocket and your well-being and your sanity and your success and your future and all the people that you're going to help in your business. So you've got to get to this level of like, who am I going to entrust to come on board, right? So we break it down into a narrative on that person. And then we take it even another level deeper where it's like, okay, if you're not very social, Darren, what does that mean? It doesn't just mean that, Darren's low sociability. What it means is constantly interacting with other people might become stressful for you. You'll benefit from having periods of time where you can be alone. You don't want to sit in meetings all day for one.
No.
I
think that's probably also why I don't like to get on the phone.
I just was going to say that. I'm so glad you said it. Like, this is also why you can't sit on the phone with prospects all day. which is why you should probably take the job that's more important on closing deals, because that's more about negotiating than it is about connecting with people.
Mm-hmm.
The inside sales is connecting with them, edifying the company, making them feel loved and special, and creating all kinds of rapport and goodwill. And then they hand them over to you for the guy that's going to call. Now you got to build some rapport yourself, but you don't have to sit there and talk to him for a half hour. You can call back and be like, well, my person said this. Is that right? Can we talk about that? I know you're wanting this, but I'm seeing this. Like, there's a gap. Like, we need to talk about it. Like, I don't understand. I want to help you. Maybe I'm missing something. Is there a 1,000 square foot addition on the back of this house that I didn't know about? And they're like, no. And like, well, can you get on Zoom? Let me show you these comps. Like, you'll just need to, you can be more pragmatic in that approach to negotiate deals.
Mm-hmm.
Sociability wise, you also might find it difficult and stressful to spend much of your day interacting with other people. That's what we just talked about, right? So we break these things down into further categories. And then at the end, which is really cool, and I think this is pretty unique to what we do, and you guys don't need to work with us to do this. You can do it on your own, but we take the results from your assessment, which is a personality behavioral cognition assessment. We compare it to the exact job those traits I showed you up there that matter for this job. I'm going to show you guys something in a second. They don't matter for every job. This is a leadership, but our system actually spits out where it takes your results and it tells me what to ask you during an interview. Like literally read this to Darren and then ask him these questions. And so this is called a structured interview. It's a big component, right, to understanding when you're in an interview, instead of just like having niceties. Where do you see yourself in 5 years? What are your strengths and weaknesses? Well, I'm sitting in here, I'm talking, hey, Darren, you seem like a pretty independent guy. My report says Darren tends to act and make decisions according to his own beliefs. He's willing to consider opposing points of view based on documented data. But however, you might be resistant to those that are based solely on popular opinion or speculation. But what that means is, Darren, you're probably not going to listen to other people too often. I don't know if that's true or not, but let me ask you this, and then I'm going to ask you a question. Basically, you're not going to get swayed by anybody, but I might be asking you a question to say like, hey, I'm guessing there's been situations, where you've been asked to offer someone more than one chance or go to an extreme just to make someone else happy or to do the right thing, even though you already know, like they've already showed their true colors to you. Have you dealt with this kind of situation in a job? I'm curious, like, tell me, like in a recent occurrence, like, how did that go? What did you think when you had to give someone another chance, Darren? You might be like, well, they didn't deserve it. And if my core values are like, take care of people and everybody deserves a second chance, like you're not really, it's not right or wrong. It's just who you are. Right. And so
right
in the structured interviewing process, the point is that when the interview's over, I understand how you'll work in this job and I know you better, instead of just saying, tell me about your strengths and weaknesses. So just to summarize for you guys, and by the way, let me show you this. This will just be kind of fun. I took your assessment, Darren, and I overlaid it on the inside sales job.
Okay.
By the way, you're a high fit.
Go figure.
So, but look where you're not task oriented. You're not going to want to talk to people. You're independent. So you're not going to accommodate them where they're going to be like, can you call me back tomorrow at 2:00? And you're like, I've already got an appointment at 2:00 tomorrow.
Like, what do you want me to do about it?
And you're skeptical. You're like, oh gosh, this isn't going to work anyway. It sounds like they're going through a divorce. There's probably a probate deal because they inherited it. Like, I'm not going to mess with this thing.
I think the skeptical thing really gets me, like when it's phone call time, because I'm just like, they don't want to talk to me anyway. So, I'm like, they're just going to be full of shit or whatever, whatever thing that you can tell yourself to make it okay to your skepticism wins.
When you're skeptical, there's a devil on your shoulder telling you all the bad crap. When you're super optimistic, there's like, it's not an angel, because they would be speaking truth, but it's more like this little happy-go-lucky guy that says, don't worry about that. Just do the deal. Say yes. Like, worry about it later. Like, that's what you got to be careful with. So, all right. So I ran long today, but I think this was a good one. The replay is in the Facebook group for everybody. John asked, how much does so the team architects, it's $3,000 to hire an outside role to get the avatar built, to get an unlimited link to do as many candidates as you want. And then we have a behavioral specialist on our team who actually does helps you do the final decision making. It's, again, I didn't really want this to be a sales pitch for this, but there is a $500 one that is for a business owner that does the leadership assessment on a business owner, and you get a second one for free, whether that's a spouse or a business owner. So that at a minimum, we call that foundations. Again, this isn't just, if you guys want to talk about that, DM me. I don't really want to get, this needs to be important to not be a sales pitch, but just DM me and we can talk about that. But in general, so Justin said, are we going to have access to the job fit intermittent guide? Seems like an awesome resource. Understand if it's pay to play. Yeah, same thing, Justin. If you want to talk about it, just DM me on Facebook, or reach out, steve@redevelopindy.com. So let me wrap by this. Let's just summarize, and then I want to hear your final thoughts, Darren, on it. So we talked about understanding on the front end that hiring is an investment, not an expense, right? There's an ROI, but there's also a break-even time frame and a ramp-up time, and we got to understand what those time frames are. We got to understand what that ROI is. There's also this, I've got to really understand my business. Ultimately, when I can reverse engineer, because I know my KPIs really well, I know exactly who and when to hire. But if not there, I can start doing a trade-off talk. I can understand my business well enough to be like, what would it mean to hire this person versus that person? Then I'm going to dig in and understand that role really detailed, in a detailed manner, so I can create KPIs. And when I say, hey, these are the activities that this person's going to have to do, that gives me the personality behavioral traits I need to utilize to hire them. Those same activities though, so here's activities. They're called KPIs, by the way. Here's activities. And if I go this way backwards, I hire someone who's good at that kind of crap. I ask them to do it. That's the crap that I ask them to track. So that's how I manage that person too. And I comp them based on how successfully they do that stuff. And I train them on being good at that stuff. So that stuff is knowing your business. I know there's 3 chunks of your business. Within each one, there's sub chunks. Those chunks, once I know them well enough, I can come in and say, I'm going to hire. I know what I can afford to invest in somebody because I know what the return will be. I utilize that same information to hire the right person. Then I train them, and then I manage them to that same stuff. That's what I track, and my comp is based on that, right? I know that's a lot that I just covered in a second there, but I can't stress enough that KPIs are so important to understand in your business. And again, you can grab that free guide on theCEONation.com if you haven't seen it. But, we went from there to digging into utilizing some kind of scientific, even if it's a disc. TonyRobbins.com has a free one, I believe. Use something. If you can get cognition into it, it's even better, right? Use it often and early with candidates. Cast a wide net, right, to the job ads. Use that kind of assessment so that you don't get to the end and you're working at a very detailed level with a candidate that you might want to hire, and then you do an assessment and find out later they're not a good fit. It's a bummer, but we have people apply all the time. I see their resume. I'm like, oh my gosh, this person's perfect. 15 years of experience, everything's perfect. And then I send them the link and they take it and they score a 10. I mean, it happens all the time that people score 10s and 5s and 15s. And I'm like, how have you been in sales for 15 years? All of your logical problem solving, you're reserved, you're a slow processor, you don't spatially visualize. It just makes me think, how is that person even doing this, or how have they done that, right? But they're not even worth your time in an interview. So the point of today, guys, was to help you understand. Most people are like, hey, they throw a post on Facebook and they're like, hey, I'm looking to hire, and they end up bringing on, fog and a mirror is the test that they do. And it's their sister's cousin's boyfriend, and they don't think they can afford it because they see it as an expense. And then they go into it without a good plan, without a good job description, and without the right person and understanding what the return is. It's just bound to fail. And then what happens is any momentum you had that made you feel like you needed to hire because there's things going on and you're busy, you kill that momentum, you're worse off. Right? And so that's what I wanted you guys to take away from this today. As a leader, as your business turns into a business, and from a hustle to a solo thing to a business, being able to identify the right people at the right time and bring them on and train and comp them correctly is literally the number one trait you need to develop as a leader. Is you've got to be able to find the right people and train and lead them correctly and compensate them correctly. And that all starts with knowing your business model really, really well, because otherwise you don't know who to hire, when to hire, you don't know what to train them, you don't know how to attract them, you don't know how to manage them. So like, get your business shored up first and then start applying people to it. So Darren, from an overall perspective, is there any, if you guys have any questions, pipe them into the chat. I'll stay on for a couple more minutes. But Darren, what was a big takeaway for you, or is there a big question you have looming after thinking through all this?
Yeah, I think probably the next question, it's probably, well, I know it's not intuitive at all. There's like how to go through the actual hiring process. Because I was gonna just throw some shit up on Facebook Marketplace and be like, yo, I'm looking for somebody to do this job. But yeah, indeed makes much more sense, things like that, because that's kind of where I went to start looking for like a job description for the ISA, even though I kind of already knew what they needed to do. I was just looking for like reinforcement of my ideas to make sure I wasn't screwing it up. But yeah, so I mean, that's good. I think the KPI thing, I never really thought about, their job description being their KPIs. But I mean, it makes total sense. It's absolutely their KPIs. So that's cool. And then, the paying them, it's probably hard for everybody to get past it on their first hire, just like mentally and emotionally. But I mean, like, you're right. Like, you're not paying them 30 grand all at once or whatever. So, and then, if they're not meeting the expectations, then, there's no ROI for them and they go out the door and you find somebody else. So.
Yeah, I think a good point along those same lines is to remember that if you bring someone in and 3 months later they're gone, trust me, it happens. Even if you do all this scientific testing and all this stuff, like they have a weird life situation, or you didn't do a good job interviewing and they're not a good culture fit and you annoy each other, stuff happens, right? But the reality is, like, whatever you're forced to do when they come on, like, now you're better at running a job ad. You've already got the job ad. You literally go into Indeed, you just reactivate it. You had to learn that. And just like anything, the first time you do, it's a little scary. But now I got this job ad and I hired him. I did some training. I realized, oh, next time I should do this. It's easier. It's faster. It's more productive. So the next person comes on quicker with a better level of understanding of who you tweak things. You're like, oh, this next time I'm going to do this. And the other thing is, while they were there, almost nobody is completely inept. Like, you failed on the hiring side if someone completely sucks. So even if they did barely anything, they probably helped a little bit. So, like, right? So when you utilize a process like we're talking about, having them leave in a month or 2 or 3 is not a fail. If they're gone in 3 to 6 months, you're more than likely better off to do it again, and the next time it'll work better, right? It's just like anything. You get better at things over time, repetition. So, all right, cool. Well, all right, Darren, I'll connect with you offline to share some stuff with you for coming on and doing the case study, because I appreciate you taking the time. I'll share some of the information if you want to run with it on your own to help with this hire. It's very nice of you. And I know since your scores were higher, it was easier for me to pull your reports up, because if they would have been like 2s, you probably would have been like, do you have to put that on Facebook Live in the group? But
thick skin, man. I was in the Marine Corps for 22 years.
Yeah, no doubt. You're like, dude, I don't care what you said. So, but I do appreciate that. So I'll connect with you. We'll help more on this hire, and maybe we'll have you kind of report back on a future Monday deal how things go. I'm excited to see that. So, guys, I don't see any other questions in. Hope this has been helpful. Again, this is being piped into the Facebook group, the CEO Nation. So if you want to catch a replay, pause and slow, take better notes. It's there. We just released a new podcast episode with Chris Noggle last week. We've got one coming this week that I think you guys will like. It's a guy who sold a software company here in town. Cool story. I think it's a 2-part series, but that's on Stitcher, iTunes, different platforms, wherever podcasts are, but it's the CEO Nation. Just search for it. Again, the ceonation.com, the website. If you guys want to hit up, there's a free KPI guide there. It's very helpful. It's 25-minute training. think it'll help you guys. But I would love to connect. Most importantly, if you can give me feedback on how these are going, these Mondays. I really want to pour my time in because I can't do lunch with everybody. I can't jump on the phone when everybody wants to pick my brain. I can't. There's a lot of things I can't do. We're coaching and we have training pieces that are coming in play. I'm spending more time doing that. And so it's taking even more of my time away. So to me, this hour and a half I spend on Monday is pretty precious for me to give to you guys in the CEO Nation. And I want to make sure it's effective. I want to make sure the most people who actually, I don't care how many people are on this. I just care the people that need to hear what I'm talking about are here. So if you have different topics you want me to talk about, let me know. Give me feedback on this. Connect in the group with me, right? And invite other people to the Mondays. It's always free. And I just want to connect and help you guys. So thanks again, Darren, for being on. I'll connect with you. Good luck with the hiring.
Cool. Thank you.
Happy New Year, everybody. And I think I got one. John said, great session. Yep, no problem, John. All right, guys, take care. We'll talk to you soon. Peace.